Can you see me all right in there? Okay. So, I was really stressed out about what I was going to do today because we're facing issues in America that are being brought up today by a lot of the protests and the people who are outraged. So I have decided to use my passion for knowledge and determination to create something that will hopefully spark a little interest and imagination within all of your hearts. So I want to talk about what we celebrate today, along with the past and present harsh realities of its existence, America. So my family has indigenous roots in southern Louisiana, and it's normal for academic presentations to acknowledge the land that we walk on, and so I wanted to give a moment to acknowledge that. And so I also wanted to acknowledge that today we currently are in the midst of a second wave of the coronavirus pandemic. Cases are rising in the US overall, and in Louisiana you can see a noticeable jump in the second wave. We're approaching another wave of the coronavirus, and we have all decided to take a risk to be here and to be near each other, and with that risk comes some weight. And so I want to talk about the history of Independence Day, right? America. When the initial battles in the Revolutionary War broke out in 1775, few colonists desired to complete independence from Great Britain, and those who did were considered radical. And by the middle of the following year, many more colonists had come to favor independence because of growing hostility against Britain and the spread of the revolutionary sentiments, such as those expressed in the best-selling pamphlet Common Sense by Thomas Paine in early 1776 were common throughout. And so, on July 2nd, 1776, the Continental Congress voted in favor of independence, and 2 days later, delegates from the 13 colonies adopted the Declaration of Independence that was drafted by Thomas Jefferson. And since 1941, it has been a federal holiday that we as Americans celebrate. And so, we celebrate America, and we celebrate the flag, and I want to talk about the American flag and it as a symbol. So the American flag is supposed to represent freedom, where you are completely free to be and express yourself as you see fit. Equality, where everyone should have equal chances of education, of employment, of everything, really. And solidarity, that if we stand up and rise together, we can make meaningful and impactful change. Now, the reality of today is that 48.8 million Americans, including 16.2 million children, live in households that lack the means to get nutritious food on a regular basis. As a result, 1 in 5 children go hungry at some point during the year, and children facing hunger are twice as likely to repeat a grade in elementary school. Black and Latinx children experience hunger at double the rate of white children, and there is a direct correlation between the lack of nutrition and thwarted development. And so when we talk about these racial disparities in income and food, it's important to talk about mental health because it is your brain health, and especially in Black Americans today. Black people are 20% more likely to experience serious mental health issues that the general population don't, including major depression, PTSD, ADHD, suicide, also socioeconomic status. Black people are about 13% of the total population, yet comprise 40% of America's total homeless. Studies have shown that homelessness and poverty negatively impact one's mental health, and that impacts one's function in society and throughout life. Black adolescents are more likely than any children of any other race to be exposed to violence. And exposure to violence not only includes being a victim or a participant of a violent activity, but also includes being a witness to violence. And exposure to violence drastically increases the possibility of developing mental illness. And so when we talk about these things, we also have to talk about the poverty cycle, where a family in poverty has a child that grows up in poverty, is significantly disadvantaged in education and skills, struggles to get a job, and fails to escape the poverty cycle, and it starts again where the family is in poverty. And so when you have higher rates of poverty in certain areas, you also have higher rates of crime. And so now we can talk about the criminal justice system. The United States has the world's highest incarceration rate, which is about 2.3 million Americans who are in prison today, and it is fueled by the war on drugs and tough crime mandatory sentencing policies that mass incarceration has had a clear racial impact. 70% of American prisoners are non-white. The average American has about a 1 in 20 chance of being imprisoned at some point in his life. But that rate is much higher for Latino men, which is 1 in 6, and African American men, more than 1 in 3, than for white men, which is 1 in 23. Strikingly, about 1 in 9 black men today, under the age of 25, lives under some form of restrained liberty, in prison, in jail, on probation, or parole. And so now we talk about police brutality. Black people are most likely to be killed by police, 3 times more likely to be killed by police. And even more, black people are 1.3 times more likely to be unarmed compared to white people. Now, in 2019, this study had 27 days where the police killed no people. Out of 365 days of the year, there were only 27 where nobody was killed in a police brutality or police violence incident. And so there's this great NPR piece that talks about a decade of watching black people die, that pays homage to all of the names and victims of police brutality today. It's a great piece. You might want to look into it. And also, it's not about crime. Police brutality is just about police brutality. There is no correlation with police killing rates and violent crime rates. There is just no excuse for police violence. There is a city, Buffalo, New York, that has the same population, percent of people of color, or just about the violent crime rate as Orlando, Florida. And they had 0 cases of police brutality compared to Orlando, Florida. Why? It just shouldn't exist. There's also no accountability. 99% of killings by police from 2013 to 2019 have not resulted in officers being charged with a crime, and most officers just get away with it. So what's the issue? If there are problems that exist in today's society that people are bringing up that are very real, what is the problem? Police nowadays are just responsible for too much. We have exhausted our police officers as a safety net to be involved in our everyday issues and lives. And here, violent crime only accounts for about 4% of the calls that come into the police department. All of these other issues can be solved by other institutions. We have just simply asked too much of our police officers to be involved in too much, and more police involvement has shown more crime. And so police money today, the US spends about $100 billion a year on policing and about $80 billion on incarceration. The United States has about a total of 5% of the world's population, but nearly 25% of the total incarcerated, the world's population. And that's a serious issue. And so we have calls today to defund the police. Now, that does not mean abolish the police. What defund the police is calling for is it's about the redistribution of those responsibilities to reinvest in the communities that need it most to help form a better and more community-oriented society. So, what can you do from this? Well, the change comes from you. Educate yourself, educate others, agitate the system, and organize meaningful and lasting change. And that is the end of my talk. These are my Twitter and social media handles, and that is the end. So you can take that however you want to. If you would like to ask me questions, you can ask me questions. Normally, after I do presentations, people have like Q&As.